Support for the podcast comes from Dr. Lana Shapiro, a developmental and behavioral pediatrician with over 10 years of clinical and research experience in leading medical centers such as the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and extensive experience in the field. She brings both personal and professional experience to approach each child and family holistically. Dr. Shapiro specializes in the early diagnosis of autism and managing the developmental and behavioral concerns of medically complex children. She provides comprehensive evaluations and tailored treatment plans for children and adolescents with developmental and behavioral differences, including medication management and educational advocacy. Learn more at lanashapiro.com. That's LANASCHAPIRO.com. Hello, parents and caregivers, and welcome back to Parenting Stuff I Wish I Knew Sooner, and I Want You to Know Now. I'm your host, Erica Desper, founder of the Center for Confident Parenting, and a mom who seemed to learn everything I needed to know the hardest way. My guest today is Dr. Kristin K. Meyer, co-founder of the REACH Group, which provides educational advocacy consulting for families navigating the special education process, with the goal of removing barriers that prevent children from reaching their full potential. Dr. Kristin, thank you for joining me. I like to say that part because it's kind of new, right?
It's very new. Thank you, Erica. Yes, I am. Nobody at home calls me Dr. Mom, but I'm hoping I'll morph from Scarlett's mom to Dr. Mom or
one
Dr.
day. Yes.
Scarlett's mom.
If I had that in front of my name, I would just use it constantly.
I'm trying. It's a huge accomplishment, and it's all surrounded by my passion for advocacy. So that's what my doctor is in. Doctor, advocate, right? Empowering parents.
Well, congratulations. That is super exciting. So tell us, obviously I know you, but our listeners may not. So tell us a bit about yourself, your family, and what brought you to this work of educational advocacy.
Yes. So a little about me. I am born and raised in Malvern, Pennsylvania. Hey. I went down south for college, learned all the ways to be a Southern miss, including making perfect biscuits. And nice. I am now happily married for over just about 12 years. And we have an amazing daughter who is 6, Scarlett. And we have a really awesome little family dynamic and a cat, and just kind of living our best life. And I kind of fell into this I was corporate America in my 20s. I was training sales consultants, but I always wanted to be a teacher. So I went back to school, got my elementary certification. And before I could do my student teaching, I had to work with neurodivergent children in any kind of setting. I did not want to work with children with disabilities. I had no interest. I wasn't familiar. I was more nervous and anxious about the whole idea. So I volunteered at a therapeutic horse farm, selfishly, because I love horses. And I figured this is going to be great. I'll get some time with horses.
What part of this could I love?
Yeah, exactly. And my first day, it was one of those really hot August days. And I was angry because I wasn't down the shore. And this little boy with CP was holding his plastic horse, and he was crying, and he didn't want to be there. And I didn't want to be there. And then I put him on the horse, and he smelled like pancakes, and he stopped crying, and my life changed. I thought, wow, his moment. This is his moment of pure joy. And it came to me through that moment. And I never looked back. I went back, got my special ed certification. I was only in a typical classroom for my student teaching. And then I finished my special ed certification, became a homebound instructor. And I worked with a young lady for 1.5 years. And then I ended up at the Vanguard School in Chester County as a teacher. And then I went into the public school system, and I taught emotional support high school. And then after 11 years in the high school setting, I kind of started to burn out. I loved my kiddos. They were the most blessed, amazing kids I could have ever worked with. Emotional disturbance, addiction, suicidal ideation, really the hard-hitting stuff that parents are dealing with right now was my typical. And so after having our daughter, I had to step away because I was giving more to them than I was to her. And then I became a principal for an approved private school. I ended up back at Vanguard. And their specific mission, autism, emotional disturbance, really spoke to me. And it carried with me. And I spent my time there while I began my doctoral studies. And throughout my entire career, I was always advocating for my friends. My friends would call me and say, Kristin, my child is going through this. What do you suggest? Or how can you help? And even when I was teaching, I was always off the clock calling parents saying, this is what's happening. This is what I'm seeing. This is what you need to be requesting, because I can't say that in a meeting. And when I became a principal, I saw that even more. So I would call my parents, and I got in a little hot water here and there, a lot of hot water here and there, and say, like, I'm going to tell you no. Here's why I'm telling you no. But if you say it this way, I'm going to say no, but my boss will say yes, because they have to. And it was little things like that that really drove me to say, okay, I can't help kids in the capacity that I want to because of my own family that I need to be there for, but I can help their parents. So I left the Vanguard School, finished my doctoral studies. I went to the ARC of Chester County. I recommend the ARC to every single family out there. They are the best resource to help navigate you and get you through if you can't find the services. That's a great starting point. So I worked at the ARC of Chester County for a year and a half, and I loved it. I loved everything. I loved the people. I loved the families. And so it was through that and my dissertation that I branched off on my own. And I met my partner, Dana Emery, and we started the Reach Group. She was doing her own thing. I was doing my own thing. But together we realized we were better as a couple than as individuals trying to help families. So that's how I ended up in this role. And I love it. I absolutely love imparting my knowledge on to families and empowering them because it's so important. I mean, I taught graduate level IEP writing. So to say I know the ins and outs of an IEP would be an understatement. And I want parents to know it at their level. So that's how we came to be the Reach, help parents reach their potential.
Yeah. And your dissertation, you said, was on the topic
yes,
of empowering.
It's educating and empowering parents. And the gap in research shows that, and this is why it's our topic today, communication is the biggest pitfall for districts and parents. And I'm excited to share more about that. But the research shows that the communication piece is pretty much the starting point for every issue that parents begin to face.
And I'm excited to dig into that. I just want to go back to two things you said. I think maybe what's unique about what you bring to the table is that you have been on both sides. So you were on the school side, the admin side for a really long time. And not everyone brings that to the situation. So I think that's really helpful. And then just to stress the here's what you say and here's how you say it. In my experience, that's the biggest benefit you get from working with an advocate. You will not, and again, all in my experience, that's the caveat to this, you won't get anything for your child that you haven't specifically asked for and asked in the way you needed to ask for it. However, how in the world would you know what's available to you and what lingo to use unless someone tells you? So parents are automatically at a disadvantage unless they happen to be so informed on this topic. And then you're emotional on top of that.
Yes. And I'll tell you, I interviewed advocates and I interviewed parents that worked with advocates. And the parent background, their socioeconomic age and everything varied from 20 to mid 50s. It varied from high school to I had doctoral level candidates that were interviewing with me. And every single person, regardless of their educational background, this lingo is specific to special education, specific to their child. And you hit it, the emotional piece. So when you're a parent and you feel that you failed because your child has a disability and you feel that is your doing, we created them, obviously we had some doing, it's hard to separate out and really clearly understand. So I had a parent that I interviewed. She has had a master's degree in special education, and she said, I went to the table and they treated me like I had zero experience. And she goes, I knew what to say, but I still didn't say it the way it needed to be said.
Right.
And that's what we love doing, is sharing, okay, this is what, take the parent out and let's start from scratch and the facts.
Yeah, exactly. So what types of scenarios are parents typically coming to the Reach group with, and how are you helping them?
You know what? It's interesting. I've reflected a lot on this thought as to what brings you to an advocate. And in my research and in our business, it boils down to mom gut. You know, when you are just at that point where you have called all your friends, you've called your own mom, you've called your mother-in-law, you've called school, you've called everybody, and still you have that something is wrong and I don't know where to turn to now. And you go to Google and you say, what do I do? And Google hopefully will bring you to an educational advocate. But a lot of the scenarios are, we really focus on autism, mental health, emotional disturbance, and ADHD, which all kind of speak to one another. And it's parents saying, we're not hearing enough from the teacher. We don't know what's going on. So how can you have a nonverbal or a limited verbal child come home and you need to know what's happening in their day? Why are they coming home in tears? Why are they school avoidant? What is happening in their day that when they come to you as mom or dad or grandparent or caregiver, and they can't even express it? So our typical cases are, we have an IEP coming up. I am angry, frustrated, insert the verb to describe how a parent is feeling. And we have to peel back that onion and get down to the core root of it. And it has been starting with that communication piece. So there isn't one specific, it is just going back to mom gut. And, you know, we have clients say to us, our service provider, our SLP, our OT, our PT said, go find an advocate. What you're saying is not supposed to be happening at school. You need help. So it really varies. You know, they'll see their child struggle, but it's typically when you're coming to us, your cup is overflowing with that stress and anxiety.
Yeah. And having reached that point and gotten an advocate, I would strongly encourage parents to consider doing that in reverse. Maybe seeking an advocate very early in the process, because nobody wants to reach a point where their cup is overflowing and they're super stressed and, you know, feeling all the things. And also you could just have such a smoother, more concise process. Like if I could go back, and this is not the first time I've said this on here, if I knew what an advocate was and I knew that one was available to us, and if I trusted my gut that something was going on, you know, maybe our journey would have been a year instead of, you know, the however many it's been now, too many to count.
And that's where parents do question and hesitate in reaching out to an advocate. It's like, well, do I need it now? And I know you've had other advocates on. A good friend of ours, Melissa Yalato, has spoken to this point. And, you know, as soon as your child is diagnosed, or even if they're getting a referral, you can bring an advocate in just for the education piece. And that is so important. Have it from the very get-go. Like you said, it just provides that sense of security and support.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to focus today on communication. Should a parent expect a teacher to just always be communicating, even if everything's okay?
Nope. And I say this as a former teacher. This is, you know, let's take back our role as parents. And I would say that to my families all the time at back to school night. Don't wait. Feel free to email me. And I taught high school, and all my high school colleagues said the same thing. Oh, they waited. Like, if you are concerned, if you have any concern, just reach out. And, I always say to my families, it's the beginning of the school year. Introduce yourself. Don't wait for that teacher to say, oh, hi, my daughter is Scarlett. So I'll reference her this whole time. Like, hey, Scarlett is doing X, Y, and Z. No, I reach out and say, dear Dr. Meyer, this is my daughter, Scarlett. This is her strengths. These are her weaknesses. This is a trigger. I know you're familiar. She probably has an IEP. If you're not, I don't want parents to ever wait. And the other piece of that is when you reach out, it ensures that teacher has the proper communication email. Mm-hmm. And I myself have had teachers that worked with me that said, oh, well, I emailed them. Well, did you really? Because teachers at times, and my staff did this, and in my early years, I did this. It was like, well, I emailed them. And then the onus is on the parent.
Right.
Right. It's exactly that, checking a box. So I always want parents to reach out and be proactive. Establish the line of communication. Start it out on the positive note. Don't wait for October for you to say, well, parent-teacher conferences are coming up. I'll talk to them at that point. Absolutely not. You can talk to your teachers at any time. Just give them about 48 hours to respond. Right. That's a big thing. Teachers are working their heinies off to get to every child. And in public school, they have a minimum of 25 kids. In that 25 kids, probably 50% have an IEP.
Right.
So you have to give them
to the IEP. If a parent's never seen one or they happen to have a reasonably short one, it's highly unlikely that the teachers are reading through all the pages of all the IEPs. So you're kind of giving them a snapshot of saying, hey, here's me, here's my kid, here's my email. And by the way, this is just a quick picture of who they are.
Exactly. And I appreciate you pointing that out, because in context, so myself, I'm middle school, high school transition, and my partner, Dana Emery, is early intervention elementary school. So from the perspective of middle school, high school, you have, as a special education teacher, you have a caseload. I typically had about 21 children on my caseload. I taught or saw throughout the day up to 60 children. That's not the 20 on my caseload. That's 60 other individuals that might have an IEP. So that means I'm referring to that case manager. So at the beginning of the school year, it was my responsibility to email every teacher that child saw. So for every single IEP I had, and we were in a block setting, so we had 6 additional teachers to communicate that IEP to. That individual science or math teacher had 13 other special ed teachers doing the same exact thing. So a regular ed teacher would be receiving close to 100 IEPs to review and prep for a science or a math lesson. So as the parent, being proactive and just shooting that email, boom, 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 that teacher's like, oh, thank God. Right. Thank you for saying that. I'm not going to review what the other IEP teacher said, but now I have a quick snapshot in time.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we aren't waiting until there's a concern well into the year. We are, from the teacher to us, we are saying, hello, here I am. Let's keep this open. Yes. So far, you've talked about kids who are already identified and they already have some sort of protocol in place. But let's go back a little bit. Let's say nothing. There's no diagnoses. There's no evaluations. There's no IEP. A parent's gut is just pinging that something is off. In that very early stage of parental concerns, like, walk us through what do we do?
Right.
We start with the teacher, and what does communicating with the teacher look like?
Keep it as simple as possible. So if I have concerns about our daughter, Scarlett, she's coming home, she's more withdrawn. First signs parents will notice is a child withdrawing from typical favorite behaviors. They will notice more sleeping in, school avoidance, crying, tummy aches, headaches, mystery illnesses. Start at the beginning. Keep a little log in your phone. Keep a log next to your bed. I'm old school. I've got paper everywhere. But start keeping those logs and then email the teacher. Typically, I say 3 weeks for a parent for your own log of data collection and say, over the course of 3 weeks, I have seen X, Y, and Z. Scarlett is reporting this at school. She's not happy about this. She's tummy aches. And you ask the teacher, are you seeing any of these behaviors? Can you, for the next week, track their behaviors? You can ask a teacher to do and help. Now, I've had great results in that. But if you are not hearing anything back and you've reached out to the parent or the teacher and you say, this is my concern, and a week has gone by and there's no email response, I always send the same email with a follow-up and change that subject line, but keep all the information, keep all of your dates. Emails are crucial for tracking data collection. And teachers are taught to call home. No calling home. Do not accept the phone call. Ask for an email response. You need a digital record, correct. And if that teacher gets you on the phone, this is not, aha, teacher, I'm trying to catch you. But the teacher gets you on the phone, make sure you say, listen, I need a moment. I want to take my notes. And then you follow up with an email to that teacher clarifying what you heard and took away.
Or let's say they grab you at drop off or pick up, like, hey, Johnny.
That is my biggest no-no. Anytime a teacher says, I would like to talk to you, you say, I don't have time. Please call me or email me. I am not prepared for this.
You somehow, you do the email follow-up.
You need to get out of the situation.
Yeah.
This is not an appropriate time. Use those words. This is not an appropriate time. I'm in pickup. How many of us are at pickup thinking about what you're making for dinner?
Right.
Or what sport you have to get to, or every other thing other than that teacher coming out. And this is my biggest pet peeve, especially for my nonverbal kiddos, when the teacher comes out and says, I need to talk to you. That face is not cool. You say, no, thank you. You keep your face and your movement to yourself. Send me an email, give me a call, because IEPs are living documents. Call an IEP meeting, teacher. Let's have a discussion. But so if your teacher's not responding and you've sent the second follow-up, that third one, you've got the principal copied on it and you are requesting a parent-teacher conference.
So you're going up. You're starting.
Yep. You email the first time.
You're going up the chain.
You email the second time. You email the principal. And always copy a guidance counselor. A guidance counselor might check that email and follow up a little bit quicker or follow up in person with the teacher, but always loop in a guidance counselor. But by the second time, if there's no response, you get that principal and you call a parent-teacher conference. Regardless of an IEP or not, you have the right to say, I have concerns.
And regardless whether they're seeing the same concerns.
If the teacher's like, oh, they're totally fine, that's great. Thank you for your information. You have a week's worth of the data I asked you to collect. I have concerns. I want a meeting. Because every school from the elementary level up has a multidisciplinary team where they will discuss students and concerns. And you need to constantly be that squeaky wheel and say, and parents are like, I don't want to be the squeaky wheel. No, go ahead. Go right ahead. Squeak away.
If you don't
bring the attention to your child, because your child is that typical child falling between the cracks.
Yeah, exactly. So to go back, you said keep it clear, keep it concise to the point. So we're not writing a novel, even though we probably have all that information and all those concerns.
I appreciate you saying that. The novel.
That's what I would do.
What we pride ourselves on at the Reach Group is we do a lot of that coaching. So when a parent calls us, they are upset, angry, sad, mad, not very happy, anything other than happy.
Yes.
And I tell my parents, write everything out that you're feeling. Write it out. Get it out of your system. Email it to me or throw it out. But that is not going to your teacher or principal. Because as a former teacher, getting that emotional email puts the teacher on defense, period. I don't care how you word it. And don't bother with the sandwich. Hey, Miss Dr. Meyer, you're a great teacher, but no. It's simple. Dr. Meyer, I am concerned that I am seeing X, Y, and Z before, after school. Could you please explain? Take all that, have your husband, your partner, your neighbor, your bestie read, get the emotion out. But emotion sets you up for the district to say, oh, they're mad. Well,
And
yeah,
that
you're
takes
mad.
the
You're
focus.
a mom.
Right.
And it
But
loses the focus.
taking the focus off your child onto you.
Completely. And trust me, I've had principals call me and say, I can't help this parent because they are so mean to my teachers. And I deal again with the middle school, high school population more. So parents have had a history of struggle because every year it's that IEP meeting. Every year you feel it. You see the storm cloud coming. Even if it's a great year, it has that emotional piece to it. So you have to take it out. You really
and I
have
think that's
to.
just another benefit of bringing someone onto the team. Like you said, of course you're going to be emotional, and there's just, you just want to shake them and be like, don't you get it? But
Right.
yeah, it doesn't serve anyone particularly well, and it does make it a little adversarial. And it's funny because a lot of parents will say, well, doesn't bring in an advocate to my team make this feel adversarial? But I think it's in fact the opposite. An advocate can keep it all sort of level, professional, concise, whereas a parent might spew, I mean, my situation's been going on for years. I have tons of pent up stuff that I want to be like, and this, and this, and that. And it
Right.
really doesn't matter at this moment for what we're discussing. It matters to me. It doesn't really matter in terms of furthering the plan for my son.
Yes. And I will say, you touched on something. Advocates are unfortunately seen as adversarial to the district. And that is something that is slowly changing as more people are kind of joining the game of advocacy. And I say game because it is an unregulated industry. There are some certifications, but they're not recognized by professionals at the district level. So yes, people have the right to have that concern, but that's why interviewing your advocate is so important, learning about their credentials, what their experience, relationship sharing is with districts. We coach our parents, yes, there might be an issue. And yes, you are bringing an advocate. But when our clients come to the table with an advocate, the district is fully aware beforehand that what the concerns are and why, and the clarification piece of it. And we come offering collaboration, not we've got the answers, but rather let's figure out as a team how we can answer parent questions and offer services.
Yes, absolutely. So let's say we've done that initial outreach and maybe everyone agrees that there's a concern that needs to be addressed, resolved, explored, whatever. What then would the regular communications with the teacher look like until we do reach some resolution? So you mentioned a lot of us as parents are afraid to be whatever, annoying, the squeaky wheel. I know that was how I felt at first. I'm totally over it now. Like how often is too often? What would you suggest in terms of like, hey, I'm just recircling back on this issue?
Right. So for our newly identified concerns, typically if a child and the team agrees that there is something to be a deeper dive into, and it's agreed that an evaluation should take place, and that's typically the next step. So you have enough data points, and districts love data. So have your data. That's why I go back to make sure you're journaling and writing down what you're seeing in patterns. Ask the teachers to look for those similarities. Typically after that meeting, the district will say, we're going to evaluate. So a permission to evaluate will be mailed home in about 10 days. Then you get a lot of paperwork. Anytime you get that paperwork in the mail, feel free to email your teacher and say, who can I talk to? Who should I talk to? Because at that point, the regular teacher is not going to be your main point of contact because they can't always answer the question. So you're going to go to pupil services or the special education department. And that's where you want to establish that good friendship with the supervisor of special ed or the elementary, they're called the LEA, and they're the legal representative in the pupil services department, special education department. And you just want to say like, okay, I got this. What does this mean? The nice thing I will say, Chester County Intermediate Unit, and this is specific to Pennsylvania, but typically most intermediate units have a parent mentor. And and that's a free service in every district, is that parent mentor you can reach out to them and ask for the help. It's free. You can go back to trying to find any free services if you need before you think about even involving an advocate, which,
Sure.
I want you to involve an advocate, but I want everybody to exercise free resources as much as possible. So
Sure.
reach out to pupil services, special education. That is a trickle communication. But if you're worried about mental health piece of it, then you can be emailing that teacher every week and saying, again, proactive. I had parents that would email me first thing at 6 a.m. because school started at 7:15 and say, Joey's having a bad day, period. Cool. Thanks for that heads up. There's nothing wrong with giving a heads up. Right. And you can subject line it. Heads up. Susie's having a bad day. We're running late. This happened last night. Yeah. Feed us the information so we can support your child. We are all addicted to our cell phone. What is a quick text or a quick email to a teacher to say, this is what is happening. This was their night. This is a behavior to expect. I loved when parents said, Joey missed his medication. Thank you for telling me, because now I know Joey's coming in, he's off his meds, and I am telling his 5 other teachers, Joey's off his meds, expect behavior,
right? And
this is how to handle it. We all want to work as a team and that collaboration. So any information you want to share. You're not, for our kids with the IEP, now that's a different scenario. Right. If you have a child with an IEP and they're limited verbally or nonverbal, and this is an SDI that you can have in your IEP, is that weekly communication via email is sent home. Mm-hmm. Parents ask for it, get it in writing in the IEP. Ask for that communication. If you have a child that diagnosis is OHI, other health impairment, typically encompasses some of our more language-based issues, what do you feel that you need to know? How do you want that? You can drive and direct the bus. If you want to email your team of teachers every week, email them. Give them 48 hours, but own it yourself. Don't put the onus on the teacher. If it's in the IEP, it's on the teacher. If it's your concerns, you have every right to send an email, but give examples, have a question, and a timeline. Hey, I know you're busy. Get back to me by the end of the week. Or, hey, you're busy. I need an answer. Who should I speak to if you can't help me? And always get, again, the guidance counselors. So if we're seeing social emotional pieces, the regular teacher might not, but the guidance counselor can offer some alternatives. So communication, if you had a concern for yourself, when would you wait to talk to your spouse or your own parents or a best friend? Right. Pretty much right away. It's the same thing for your child. So use your gut and then grace the teachers with 48 hours to get back to you.
And that's interesting.
IEPs you can have written in.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to stress. So actually, I'm not sure about ours. I'm going to go back and check because this is a little bit new for me. I always say I'm doing this podcast for everyone else, but I always learn something too. So it's a little bit for me. So you can agree upon as a team what the communication will look like and the frequency with which it will happen. And that can be written into this individualized education plan. And once something's written in, they're beholden to that by law. That's the difference of having it in writing.
Correct. And I will tell you this, you will get pushback on it. Sure. And the pushback is always the same. Well, we're trying to teach them how to advocate for themselves. And yes, you are. Thank you very much. And yes, there is every portal with grades and updates, blah, blah, blah. As a teacher, I got my grades updated once a week. My content teachers, they were lucky at once a week. So Power School and all these Power portals, they are not live time. So you're coming down on your kiddo for a grade that's not actually live. And you're saying, Scarlett, why didn't you hand that in? And she's like, but I did. And there's tears and there's an argument. So these portals are amazingly inconsistent. So you can say that at a meeting. Yes, my child can access Power School, Power Portal, gradebook, whatever. But is that updated in real time? Right. No. So if I have a question, I would like an answer. And my child who lacks skills in executive functioning or is nonverbal cannot advocate for themselves. Therefore, I would like this built into the IEP, because and this is a horrible way to describe it, but what I taught all my teachers is the bus syndrome. If you go out onto Route 3, and my colleagues and I would, because I was in Delaware County, you go out onto Route 3 and the 2:00 bus comes by and I'm not coming back tomorrow. Well, the next teacher needs to be able to step into my empty shoes and make that IEP consistent.
Right, exactly. Shout out to Delco. That's where I am right now.
Yep. my heart's in Delco.
So since our topic is communication, so far we've talked about written, emails and things like that. Another way I understand that parents can communicate is to call an IEP meeting over these concerns or over the lack of communication or whatever. So can you touch on that a little bit? How often do those meetings have to be held? But then also what's a parent's right if they want one in between?
So the annual IEP date is annual and it's mandatory, and that has to be held within a week of that annual date. Some districts might, if you're getting an evaluation or a reevaluation or updated testing or functional behavior assessment to determine behaviors and what might be causing them, that might change the IEP date. But outside of the annual IEP date, you can call an IEP meeting anytime you want. Anytime you want. For my nonverbal, limited verbal kiddos, I suggest that your meeting, if you're not feeling supported, you should have a meeting once a quarter. If you feel that that isn't adequate enough, you can have a biweekly call with the teacher, and that can be written into the IEP. But that document needs to be, like I said, it's living, and you can have these meetings as often as you want. But let's not, don't abuse the system, obviously. If you have concerns and you're not being heard via email, ask for that team to get together. And you, as the parent, you drive that bus. You say, here is my availability. I am available. Give 5 dates, 5 times, and make your schedule accessible, because then the district says, oh, okay, they're working with us. They're not waiting for dates. And that's the other thing, because there's so many people at these meetings that in and of itself is overwhelming. You can say, I just want if it's elementary, I want the classroom teacher, the principal, and the guidance counselor. If you're middle school, high school, start with the principal, homeroom teacher, and the class of major concern, or just the principal, homeroom teacher, guidance counselor. Homeroom teachers, I was one of them. You see a lot. You see a lot of things go down. So that is a great point person for that upper grade level to hit in with. But, you have it annually, but never be afraid. And if you're not getting results by saying, I just want a team meeting, you then really say, I am requesting an IEP meeting, because then a clock goes into effect and they have 10 days to respond. And there's all these different wonderful clocks and timelines that impact an IEP. So you can always ask.
And starting the clock is tied to having the request in writing, and to stress that email counts as in writing. We're not talking about snail mail anymore.
Yes, thank you. Yes, email is your timestamp.
Awesome. And to go back to another thing you said, we use a lot of lingo, and I say we as if I'm an advocate, but I'm not. In this special education world, even the parents, we start to use a lot of lingo that maybe people can't define. So when you say it's a living document, what exactly do you mean by that?
So an IEP is a legally bounded document by the district for that child. And it identifies that child does in fact have a disability underneath the 13 categories as recognized by across the country. And when it's living, it means that there are goals that are consistently worked towards to help the need as outlined in the evaluation for that child. So if a child has a math goal because they have a math need, that goal is being monitored weekly, bi-weekly, once a month, depending on baselines, depending on all the fun things that go into writing goals. And that changes, and it changes very small, and you'll get those changes via progress reports. So when these are happening, it's in constantly growing, evolving. Goals will be changing, goals will be amended. That's what makes it living. Mm-hmm. It's also that your specially designed instruction, SDIs, and accommodations are active every single day. So when a child is allotted small group instruction in math, well, when Scarlett goes to math tomorrow, she gets that small group instruction. That's what the living piece is, that the SDIs, against specially designed instruction, and accommodations are implemented on a daily occurring basis. And so that document year round, it's not like, well, we didn't feel like doing this today. Well, no, that's part of her supports. That's what she needs. Mm-hmm. So it's a regular occurring thing.
Okay. And that would be another piece I would stress too. If a child isn't getting something that they're entitled to through the IEP, that is also something that parents want to document with dates and data, because they are still entitled to it. So let's say they can't find a provider or whatever.
Yes. That's a big thing in also reviewing with your child, depending on where their abilities lie and what their IEP is for. Coaching them and telling them what they are allowed to and what supports are available should start right away. Mm-hmm. So one of my kiddos this is my best friend's son, I've worked with their family he's now 17. So since kindergarten.
Wow.
And she texted me the other day and she's like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe it. But her son went to his teacher and said, he's on the spectrum. He goes, I have this accommodation. For him to be able to do that was years of practice of us saying, did you tell your teacher this? Now, his delivery, God bless, because we love our kiddos who are on the spectrum. Sometimes the delivery is not packaged the way we want it to be.
One thing at a time.
Exactly. But the fact that he very clearly said, my IEP, the teacher was like, I wasn't okay. Thanks so much. And he was so excited. He texted his mom to say that, so that's awesome. Don't hesitate to loop your kids in. And it was something also when I was a principal, parents were hesitant. Well, I don't want them. No, let them know. Yeah. They know they're different, but let's celebrate their differences and empower them to be their own voice. And that's how having them at IEP meetings and modeling for them, your accommodation is this. Let's make sure we ask for it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Love it. All right. That was all super, super helpful. It really is aligned with the whole theme of the podcast. I wish I knew all of that way back in, I don't know, preschool or kindergarten versus now as we head into high school. But I can only hope that someone who needs to hear it does, and their journey goes better, smoother, faster. So let's shift gears at this point. Take your professional hat off, put only your mom hat on. What are you loving about parenting your daughter right now?
I say this to everybody. I am not strong with younger kids. There's a reason I taught high school. So she's 6 now. She's in 1st grade. And it's just seeing her personality and playing babies and playing Barbies, her voice. In her independence and who I joke, my mom, I grew up in a very strict household, and my mom was a very strong, bold, beautiful human being. And I birthed my daughter. I birthed my mom through, they're the same people. They're both blondes with blue eyes, and I am stuck in the middle. So God ensured that when my mom is no longer on this planet, I have a mini version of her.
That's so great.
It's cool. It's neat to see just through their eyes what the world is like. and I see how she mimics me, and it's in this age, it's making me also reflect on my choices
Oh
and
yeah,
who,
they will do that.
yeah. And it's things that it's like, ooh,
Hmm.
I don't want her to pick that habit. I don't want her doing that. And that she's learning it for me. So let me rethink this. Let me rethink my life. So she makes me question some of my choices and
That's
actions.
amazing. And that's a lot of, to your credit, that's a lot of self-awareness to be able to see it and spot it and get curious about it
It
and make
took
a
me a long time to
change.
get to that point. It took me a long
Yeah.
time.
That's a lot. I always say they're always teaching us something. It might not be the thing we wanted to learn, but it's important. Well, she sounds adorable, and your mom must be thrilled to that. She'll always be here to give you a hard time.
Oh, she knows. The two of them. I'm either Sharon's daughter or Scarlett's mom.
There you go. You have no
I
identity.
don't have a name in between.
Of your own. No accomplishments of yours. All right. What is the most, you kind of already went this way, but what's the most challenging aspect of parenting for you currently? I can hear that her being so young, that's not like your jam, right?
It's not my strength. Letting her be independent, not trying to control every step. Again, like going back to how I was raised, it was very specific in presentation and mannerisms and demeanor. And I joke around for all of our Gilmore Girl fans. I'm like as much Lorelai as humanly possible outside of like I had Scarlett after I got married, but my parents are those parents. So it was very particular. So for me, allowing Scarlett her own voice has been a huge growing area for me. And literally, like I'll go over to my mom's with Scarlett and my mom will say, her hair's not brushed. Her coat's not on. She's going to die. And she's not going to die. And her hair isn't brushed. You're correct. And that's her choice. And I am a little embarrassed, yes, but it's her choice. She
You're
wants
picking
to,
your battles.
I'm not trying to, I got to the point in my life where perfectionism was the only way I could leave the house. And years of therapy where I was finally able to cry in public and be myself and know that perfectionism is not something tangible. So allowing her to live independent is my biggest struggle.
Wow. That's really, really powerful. Thank you for being willing to share that struggle. I can relate to that. I've had my own years of therapy and battling. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Not recovered, recovering.
It's every day.
Yes. Do you have a work-life balance? And if you do, how do you make that happen for yourself?
I never did until I was brave enough to start this journey of my own business because it was not something modeled at home. Growing up, my mom was an entrepreneur herself and she started her own business. She had no work-life balance. So I just got it. January 1st, New Year's resolution. I actually,
this January?
Yes, this January, I finally got it. This
All
January.
Right, so folks, this will post later, but it is February 5th. So this is a very, very new thing for Dr. Kristin.
Yes, very new, but it's been kind of a long time coming. I love practicing yoga, so I would find time when I could. Last year, we got the Big Ass Calendar, and it's by Jesse Eisler. I always mess up his last name, but you have to plan your life around it. And it caused such anxiety and stress for me, but my husband's like, we're doing it. So every day it was one challenge. So for January, I challenged myself just to walk half a mile, regardless of weather and temperature and what I was doing. It was a tag team effort, so he was involved. So that started a year ago in 23. I've managed to keep that up. This year for 24, I summarized because I love to read, but I also don't have time. So I downloaded, what's it called? I love this app. I downloaded this app for this year. It's called Headway, and it summarizes books for you. And then they had the 5 a.m. club, which is a huge thing right now. People are talking about. I am not up at 5 a.m. No, girlfriend needs her beauty sleep. I'm up by 6. and I do 20 minutes of yoga and 20 minutes of reflection journaling. I have 2 books that I've been working on for 3 years now, and I finally committed to them this year. And every morning I cut that time out. It's agreed upon with my family. They can't bug me. They can't talk to me. But I had to literally get permission and talk to them about it and get their buy-in. And that has set the tone for my morning. The other piece of it is
And you had to give permission to yourself, right? First.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. To say I deserve this. Yeah. I mean, my blood pressure was off the charts. My weight was uncontrollable. My cravings were insane. My sleeping was bad.
Your cortisol was so high.
Oh, yeah. I needed to take care of myself finally. And I always go back to, when you're pregnant, that's when you love yourself the most. Not because you actually love yourself. It's because you have a person in you that you love more than yourself. So I had to say, why don't I love myself enough? And it's the truth. Why didn't I love myself enough to take care of myself for my family? I ended up in the hospital last year writing my dissertation because of stress. And the doctor said to me, "You're stressed." And I was like, "You're a man. That's why you're saying that to me." And he was like, "Okay, you have a strong personality too.
You're stressed and you have a strong personality.
Wow, you can stay for the weekend, but go home." And so I
really need you out of here.
like I was giving advice to the nurses because of my back.
You were like, "Don't mansplain stress to me, dude."
Yes, and I was so angry. But he was right. Even my therapist said that. She's like, "You're stressed." I was like, "You're a woman. You can't say that to me." She's like, "Okay, but you are."
You can hear the right things from maybe the wrong person, but they're still the right things.
Right. So finally I was like, I owe this to myself. So I did it. I'm doing it. It's now, like you said, February 5th. I notice when I don't do it, I am irritable. I am angry. And I take it out on everybody else. And it's not like I'm like this wrath of like, no, it's just like, oh, God. Like I'm short. And so that time allows me. But my biggest thing, I'm addicted to my cell phone. And so I'm no longer I don't allow myself to text my partner. I have all these great ideas after meditating. And I'm like, "Hey, guess what I want to talk about?" And it's like, I'm interrupting her morning and stressing her out. I'm interrupting my morning. So nobody texts. I do not text or check work email or social media until after 8:00. And all social media and texting ends by 5:00. So I cannot check anything work related outside of working hours, because back in the day before cell phones, that was the reality. And you know what? If you need me, if it's an emergency, I tell my clients, text me, call. And I am available to them. My family recognizes that. But yeah, I had to stop it all. I had to put hard stops because I have that personality.
Yeah. It became a matter of life and death, basically.
It did. In my daughter's life, not mine, hers. Yeah. I didn't read. I didn't play Barbie. I didn't do any of this stuff. I was like, Mommy's got to work. But when my mom started her business, I was in high school. I'm starting a business, running a business, and she's when she needs me the most in elementary school and building those habits, healthy habits.
Wonderful. Well, excellent modeling for Scarlett. Congratulations on all the stuff you've gotten done and all the self-awareness and your own personal journey. I really, really hope that helps someone. So we could clearly talk forever, but let's wrap it up soon. I have one more question for you. I'm sure I'll have you back. What is one thing that you've learned on your own parenting journey that maybe we haven't touched on yet, that you wish that you had discovered or learned or come to sooner, that you would love for other parents to hear now?
We kind of talked about a little bit with allowing my daughter to be her own child. In what I do, and my initial response was like, well, I've experienced because I've been a teacher. Well, I've experienced with high school kids, so I really understand that plethora of it. But as a growing human being, a favorite book of mine that my husband actually introduced me to was The Self-Driven Child. And they really talk about being a mentor to your child and that role model, not controlling who they are, but guiding them. And I grew up with a dragon mom, helicopter mom. I've got my lion back behind me. I joke and say I'm a tiger mom. It's hard not to want to control and ensure perfection for your child. And this book, and I've shared it with all of my daughter's classmates' parents, and it's huge, because for my really high functioning parents, and we live in an area that has over the top high IQs and competition and all the things that really make society hurt itself, is that we have to allow them to fall and make mistakes, and we have to provide the praise that they are willing to make mistakes. And one of the biggest takeaways that I said to all of my parents when I was a teacher, they'd come to a meeting and I'd have a child with a D average. And the parents were like, well, they've got a D. And it's like, well, D's darn good because they had an F 2 weeks ago. So what are we striving for? We're not going to have an A from an atypical child. If let's meet them where they are and celebrate what they've accomplished and not compare. And really taking that comparison out for my own person as myself and showing that to my daughter, like, don't compare yourself. Your only competition is yourself. That's what I've really learned from that book. In my old age and wisdom, I've accomplished, I had that checklist. I've accomplished my checklist. And now I'm like, well, cool, I did that, but what's next? Just flowing, just allowing her to figure it out. I don't overschedule either. The best advice I got from one of her teachers is don't overschedule. She has classmates that are in activities Monday through Friday.
Yep.
And parents complain about behaviors. Parents complain about lack of personal responsibility. And I let her be bored. We took her for a car ride and she's like, I am so bored. And I celebrated it. My husband and I laughed hysterically. We're like, good. Figure it out. Now what? Use your imagination. Yeah, exactly. It's like she gets no technology at a restaurant. She gets no technology really at all. And I think that allows her to be bored and creative. And I think that is so important.
So many gems in there. This was excellent. Dr. Kristin Meyer, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would love to.
I hope everybody enjoyed this. Listeners, I'll be back soon with more stuff that I and others wish that we knew sooner. In the meantime, I'll leave you with my list of stuff I learned the hardest way, which is still accept help when it's offered, ask for it when it isn't. You are the expert on your child, so trust your gut. And if you need to be, and Dr. Kristin would agree, be the squeaky wheel. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll be back soon.